Hi, in this video I'm going to give some tips about the way to write good guidelines. Usually guidelines are called procedures, instructions, way to do the work, and so on. Okay, I want to be very general here. So first, why write some guidelines? Why standardize things? Basically, if people are in this situation, some other people are using a wheel, then you want everybody to use the wheel, right? So first, you need to document standard ways of doing things, and it does help a lot with training also when new people come in, so they don't do this, but they go straight to the wheel. And really, it's a never-ending work. It's not you go from here to here right away, no. Standardizing, documenting the processes takes a lot of steps. And improving is one thing, stabilizing is another thing. So you can improve a lot of things. For example, in your library, you might have a number of books, you organize them nicely, but then if you use them regularly, after 1 or 2 months, it might be messy again. So how to stabilize? Well, the idea is that to have some bookends and maybe also some labeling, so we know that these books go here, these other books go there. But really, this fundamental idea is to have the bookends, just to make sure things don't keep moving all the time. Okay, that's one of the main objectives of having good standard operating procedures and so on. So it's always a balancing act. There are some pitfalls. So you want to have control over your operations for sure. Document it. Document the way you do your processes. Improve it, and then keep documenting it. That's great. Now, what you need to be careful with is don't produce excessive rules. Just for the need to make everything that can be routine into simple routine work, so that they can be thinking about the most important things. Okay, and then a lot of formalism usually drives people away from documents. So here I made a list of a number of common risks to keep in mind. But really, when you write something, make sure people actually do it. Is the fundamental things here. Fundamental idea. If you write something nobody will read, it's waste. If you write something that's not needed, it's waste, and actually it even creates confusion because people are wondering why it's written. Too many documents, long documents, requires a lot of maintenance in the long term. Okay, you might have some contradictions even between different separate documents. Be careful. Reusing templates from other companies is very common. A lot of consultants do that. That's not always very smart. Okay, and also reusing templates that were good for the 2008 version of ISO 9001 is actually quite dangerous. So I'm going to talk specifically about the way to comply with this version of the ISO 9001 standard. Okay, the general timing is that you write everything, you teach the people how to do it, you operate the new system for at least 3 months, and then you start with stage 1 and stage 2 audits to get a certification. The auditors will have some specific needs that are not actually required by this standard. They will want a manual, they will want the documents to look in a certain way, and so on. Okay, but also they need to be flexible. Actually, if you work with a register and then they say no, everything has to be exactly like this, and they require a lot of things that are really not in this standard, you might want to work with another register. So let's go into a few examples here. This is simple. This means, okay, this is this kind of document. This is the version, the date it was issued, this 4 pages, this is the title. Okay, everybody can read this. Any auditor would be happy to see this at the top of the page. Then when you read a procedure, it usually goes like this. When is it supposed to happen? What's the scope? Who's supposed to do it? What are the steps? Okay, this is very standard. It's fine. Just don't make it 10 pages. Keep things short here, because the most important is actually what happens, the steps. Having the versions like this, version 1, version 2, version 3, and so on, is a good thing, because, and it's required actually by it's part of document control. However, does it have to be on the first page of every document? I don't think so. Just makes things a little bit more tedious to read. Okay, going straight to the second page to read the content of the procedure is not a great idea. I think this can definitely be at the very end of the document. Then when it's broken down into steps like this, okay, that's good. How to do incoming QC. If there are some questions, then they can read it and mostly answer their questions. That's a good thing. However, there could also be a simple flowchart based on that doesn't have all these details. It doesn't have to have all these details. Simple flowchart, and people can just put it in the on a wall next to the area about incoming QC, and people can simply refer to it. And then when they have some questions, they can actually go into this document that has a lot of details. That would be great. So when I'm talking about a flowchart, it can simply look like this. This one is pretty good. And it says sort of the different phases, or this could be different people involved maybe. It's, I say, nearly perfect because it's got the this is conform, not conform, and so on. Okay, there's some decision points, there's some loops. It's relatively clear. Okay, but usually there are conventions. It's better if, for example, the start and end nodes are designated like this, the steps are like this, the decision points are like this, and so on. Usually it's better to take the conventions that everybody's been using for many years rather than reinventing the wheel. Another way to not reinvent the wheel is to simply say, okay, there's a hierarchy. First is the overall view. So start with a process map, okay, which shows the sequence and interaction of processes, okay. Start with the basic backbone of a manual that actually explains how the quality management system is set up. And then there's these three things. There's a SOPs that says, okay, who's going to do what, when. Doesn't necessarily delve into all the little details. Then the work instruction of exactly what, actually no, this is the what, okay, what, when, where, who does what, and so on. This is the how. And this one can really go into all the little nitty-gritty of the how to do the work. And then you have forms, and when they are filled out, they can be kept as records and so on. Okay, this is usually every auditor and consultant will have this kind of setup in mind, so it makes sense to just adopt it also. Or just to get back here, sometimes in China, this they call SOP and this they call procedure, which makes no sense to me, but I've seen it a number of times. Also, this sometimes when it's the work instruction for the inspectors, they would call it SIP, Standard Inspection Procedure. But it's really at this level here, so it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, a WI is for operators, maybe on an assembly line, it's for quality inspectors, and so on. It's all a WI, really. Can be just QCWI, then everything is clear and consistent. A few other tips is, if you always write, if this happens, do that. Okay, it's relatively dangerous. So it's very clear for the people. Well, it sort of removes their ability to think, but at least it's very clear. Now the problem is, it's if an auditor comes and reads these kind of things, they're going to look for at least one example where this was not done, and it's usually easy for them to find that. So better wording is to add if deemed appropriate, if deemed relevant, or if this seems appropriate, then maybe if it seems appropriate, otherwise escalate to maybe the quality manager, the production manager, and so on. Okay, or simply it's usually better. Okay, it's also pretty clear, pretty simple, but it doesn't put you in a corner where you always have to do this, otherwise you don't comply with what you wrote. But remember, what you wrote is what you should do always. And don't write too many documents. Again, as I said before, it's easy to get carried away and have long documents that in the end are very hard to maintain. Okay, when it's done in a form, you don't need to have a WI to explain how to do the form. You can actually have the form guide the user. You can add some special comments and show an example, and usually it's fine, and maybe a couple of pitfalls to avoid. When you can have a flowchart, do it. It's much better than a big block of text because people will not read it. When a video can be done, just shoot a video. You can put them on shared folder and so on, and simply give a link for people to get it. There are many ways to do that. And actually, okay, forms can be avoided when you have an ERP system. A lot of the forms, a lot of the data, a lot of the records will be right there. And you might have some other software, such as an inspection and auditing application, or some others. Think about this, and over time you might start with some forms in Excel or Word or something like that, and then later, this is like the low-tech version, and then later get into the high-tech version. That's fine too. Write it in a way that makes it easy for people to read, because again, if they don't read it, it's just a waste. And then your system won't have any teeth. People will not comply. So if there's one group of users, you can have an SOP and a WI, that's fine. But if you have 3 different groups of users, the SOP is going to be fine, but don't do just one WI. Do 3 WIs, 1 WI for each group. For example, you have something that involves R&D, purchasing, production, and quality. Well, the SOP can be done. Maybe have one of these groups own the process, really be responsible for it. But then you can have different WIs for different groups, and then the users just look at exactly what they need and nothing else. It's going to be usually much better. What language? Everything for production line leaders and operators and so on, if it's in China, should be in Chinese. Now, anybody who can read and write good English, and it's really necessary for their position, can have SOPs and WIs in English. Okay, that's just common sense. Okay, and then how about the length and the amount of details to include? Keep it short in the first draft. Then, as special situations, special cases come up, as people ask questions, as you see that there are some cases that are not covered in the first draft, in the first version, then over time add some details. But again, don't try to cover 100.00% of the cases. Usually it's a bad idea. The right terms, so if you want to be ISO 9001 2015 certified, there are certain terms that you need to use. Documented information includes the documents, the records, the samples, and so on. Okay, interested parties. Don't just focus on the customers. It's about the interested parties. Might include some other stakeholders, and so on and so forth. Same idea. So I hope that was clear. I hope that gives you some good ideas. Just drop me an email if you'd like. Thank you.